Of course, she didn't come on today, so I'm trying to, in her absence, I'm glad she took her kids out of public school. I know she felt that. On top of the rewriting of history, the changing of math. It just some of the stuff that they're doing just don't make sense. It's like, why? How can you have world history and not include black people? As if we're not a part of the world. We started it. Let's start there. How can anybody be in world history if black people are not in there? And the first mother. The first mother. The queen of all mothers is black. I mean, you know, I don't suggest it for everybody, but I'm going to tell you, I get it. I get it. I get it now more than I ever have before. I get it. So we are absolutely praying, God, that you protect Candace Owens. Because one thing is for sure, she is doing the work of God. Telling the truth and shaming the devil. Absolutely. Okay. I heard somebody else talking about, somebody should all want to have a friend like somebody. They wasn't talking about Candace, but you can sure tell they been over here in my bushes. Yeah, but I'm going to say it the right way. We should all desire to have a friend like Candace. Not some YouTube character, not somebody that's running around playing skits and games. I'm talking about somebody who really stands in the cut, will jeopardize their life for you. Not acting. I'm talking about real life. For real, for real. For show, for show. And not just with their mouth, but with their actions. Anybody can say it. But standing 10 toes down, yeah, 10 toes down. I'm talking about 10 toes down. Somebody who came out saying, I want war with all of y'all. Because I know you killed my friend. And I'm going to prove it. That's what she said. You understand? And what has she been doing? Proving it. Got them all scared. Because if she was lying, you wouldn't be trying to put a hit on her life. You understand? If she was lying, be like, y'all. But the dots connect. And then, on top of that, she have someone in the government, I'm not going to say intelligence, but I'm a damn sure say in the government, that works in their some shape, form, or fashion, that is not pleased. And the way I'm seeing things move, the way I think I just realized who it may be. Yeah, I think because we listen, if we listen, we may have just figured out who it may be. And then you have President Obama speaking on behalf in regards to Charlie and the threat, and that it may be because of Trump. Yeah, if we pay attention, I think we just heard who it could possibly be who gave her that flight information with military and provided the bunkers, and who, yeah. Only if you was listening with your good ear and not looking to see if President Obama was a AI or not. Is if the message is gonna be different if it's AI. If the message is sound, I don't give a shit who did it. If the message is sound, and because it is him, it's coming. It resonates in a tone in which I can receive it. While y'all over there running behind a man who calling people piggy and all that stupid shit, but can't change his own damn diaper, can't even wear drawers, sucking on Bill Clinton's pickle and shit and playing with kids. And you want me to be concerned about if it's AI or not? And hell, in a minute, AI gonna have your ass, gonna have your job. Why you worrying about if it's AI in a minute? Robots gonna be delivering your food. What the hell you mean? That's what they doing. They trying to do process of elimination because they no longer need you. Why you worried about if it's AI? Hell, I need for Trump to be AI too and say something that makes sense instead of that stupid shit. Yeah, that's what Bill Bubba was trying to do, was trying to get him to shut the fuck up because he talked too much. That's about the only time he was quiet, but hell, I'm sure he was trying to talk through that. Had to put a whole device on his face and shit. They was into that freaky shit. Yeah. But shut up and swallow. You big hip man, you. Nigga got hips bigger than the average woman. Yeah. Let's listen to this, y'all. This is just crazy. And when I was thinking about it, I was in the kitchen just then, and I said, I think President Obama believe it. Believe the threat on this young lady. Because of Charlie Kirk. And the assistance that she's getting to connect the dot. And saying that Trump is tied to Charlie Kirk. He just sealed it. One thing is for sure. President Obama would not have made not one connection if it wasn't connected. If he had not gotten some form of intel, he wouldn't have said nothing. He didn't say nothing until she got a threat. Y'all better stay woke. And he called her. Trump called her and said, back away from these people.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
She's
yes,
so
you guys, guess what? Today is Jean-Michel Trogneau's birthday. In other words, happy birthday, Brigitte Macron, First Lady Brigitte Macron. So
This was
excited
some
to get
months
into
ago.
this, to bring to audiences who exactly is Jean-Michel Trogdeau, where he is. It's time to start that part of this series. So
Bryant, you are
welcome
so
back
funny.
to our series, Becoming Brigitte. So some things to recap.
Can we hear?
I was so frustrated at the end of the last episode because so many of you had commented, Candace, it's time for you to create a family chart. And we had already created a family chart. We just got so busy that I forgot to show it to you, obviously, on the show. So I completely dropped the ball there. I apologize, of course, when we are doing these sorts of series like the Kamala series, and now as we look at this Brigitte series, there are so many names that it does become confusing. And it's good to slow it down and be able to visualize who and what exactly it is that we are talking about. So let's kind of go backwards and start there. I am showing you guys now the Emmanuel Macron family chart. Okay, these are allegedly, I'm saying allegedly here because I have...
Hold on. Please hit the like button. 511 people in. 100 or so just came in. Double tap the face of your screen, please. Just like that. It's real simple. Or hit the three dots at the top right. And I would greatly appreciate it. It's after 1 o'clock and I am sleepy. So if you want me to stay on, I'm going to need for you to hit that like button. And if you don't care, just go ahead and leave. And then I will know that you're saying you don't care. Go to sleep.
Tons of questions as we get deeper into the story, but his parents, Jean-Michel Macron, then you have Françoise Nogue. Obviously, we spoke a lot last week, particularly about Germaine Nogue, who he refers to affectionately as Manette, right? She's the one that shared this love of pedophile-centric books with her grandson. She is,
wow.
as we mentioned to you last week, the only family member that he includes in his...
Who shares
about Germaine Nogue, who he refers to affectionately as Manette, right? She's the one that shared this love of pedophile-centric books with her grandson. She is, as we mentioned to you last week, the only family member that he includes in his childhood stories throughout his autobiography, which is entitled Revolution.
Wow.
So wanted to get over that, wanted to speak about revolution, understanding that that is actually the Macron chart. And then, of course, like I said, his...
When we was talking about the pastor, and we was like, that's a majority of the time it's passed down. Y'all see this? Oh man, how you gonna read? Oh my God, this is just crazy. I don't know why you just kind of assume that people live normal lives. But, oh, this is just way over the top, Lord Jesus.
Mother, what we described on last week's episode, or a couple of days ago, the episode was that Dr. Frances Nogue, his mother, when she was first introduced to the world, she was introduced as a pediatrician who helped out in some capacity the Social Security office. And then we had this huge bombshell in the last episode where we learned, just kidding, by Social Security work, we forgot to include the fact that she helps transgendered and intersex people secure new identities. I mean, that was a major. Oh,
that was very major.
That really, it's explosive. And it's important for you to remember that as we go along, because that means that Macron's immediate family was involved in helping people, okay, who had gender issues to become someone else. In other words, they were facilitating the issuing of real government IDs, which allowed people to legally shed themselves of their former identities and their true biological sex. We have to wake up to the fact that that is the reality of the world that we live in today. So what is that? What are the implications of that? Let's just pause there. What are the implications of if I decide to include the fact that she helps transgender Dr. Frances Nogue, his mother, when she was first introduced to the world, she was introduced as a pediatrician who helped out in some capacity the Social Security office. And then we had this huge bombshell in the last episode where we learned, just kidding, by Social Security work, we forgot to include the fact that she helps transgendered and intersex people secure new identities. I mean, that was a major tidbit. I mean, that really, it's explosive. And it's important for you to remember that as we go along, because that means that Macron's immediate family was involved in helping people, okay, who had gender issues to become someone else. In other words, they were facilitating the issuing of real government IDs, which allowed people to legally shed themselves of their former identities and their true biological sex. We have to wake up to the fact that that is the reality of the world that we live in today.
Right.
So what is that? What are the implications of that? Let's just pause there. What are the implications of if I decide, okay, I'm Candace Owens. Nope, I feel like actually I was born a man, and so I'm going to change my name. I'm going to change my name to Jean-Michel Trogneau, okay? And then someone comes out and they say, like, you know, Candace Owens is this person. Can I then sue them for defamation for saying that I'm Candace Owens if I've legally changed my name to Jean-Michel Trogneau? Does that become the basis of a defamation suit if you are able to shed your identity? I want you to think about that as we keep going throughout this series. It's very important to remember this, that his mother was dealing with this capacity in the Social Security office. I should also add here that thereafter, shockingly, in a very rare interview his mother gave to a journalist named Gail Chakaloff, she was writing a biography about the Macron couple. The biography was entitled Just the Two of Us. And she spoke with his mother, and his
Just
mother
the two of us
said something
guys.
very strange. She said, and I quote, and it's in this book, "For me, Brigitte is not a daughter-in-law." Excuse me? What does that mean? Brigitte is married to your son. She's been married to your son for a very long time. She fell in love with your son when your son was 14 years old. What do you mean, to me, she is not a daughter-in-law? What is the implication of that? What else could she be? What else could the first...
What else could she be? Oui, bonjour. What is she? Would you have a wee wee? A pussy? What do you have down there? She's not your daughter-in-law. What is she? E.T. found home. Woo, baby. Wee, pussy. Which one do you have, boo-boo? DPP. Denise. DPP. Oh my God. And his mama, who mama? Lord, this is some crazy stuff. Y'all really want now? Y'all just should and then now y'all don't put hits out on people's head. We finding out a lot. Brian, I mean, we going in, ain't we?
with his mother, and his mother said something very strange. She said, and I quote, and it's in this book, "For me, Brigitte is not a daughter-in-law." Excuse me? What does that mean? Brigitte is married to your son. She's been married to your son for a very long time. She fell in love with your son when your son was 14 years old. What do you mean, to me, she is not a daughter-in-law? What is the implication of that? What else could she be? What else could the First Lady be to you? So
Now
let's take a look at Brigitte Macron's family chart, okay? We've got some other important things to remember. So you have Brigitte, who allegedly was married for 32 years to this guy, Andre Louis Ozier, okay? And they allegedly had 3 children.
And that he molested.
Florence Ozier, Sebastian Ozier, and Tifon Ozier. Now, it's important to remember which we touched upon last episode, that the First Lady just routinely sort of gets things wrong in her interviews, right? Like she gets the date wrong from when her sister, Mary Vaughn, died. She had got the date very wrong from when her alleged niece died. And we're starting to think of this as more of a strategy than anything else. Like, it's not just forgetting dates, it's because you're trying to confuse the public. And a big indication of that was Tiffon, okay, her daughter, getting both the date and the manner of her father's burial wrong in Paris Match magazine, weekly magazine. How is that possible? Remember, we talked about this. We can bring up that chart again. Very weird mystery regarding this Andre Louis Ozier character. How weird it was, we cannot emphasize enough. We learn from his first cousin, okay? He had a first cousin named John Louis Ozier, and that's where it got really confusing for some people. There was a first cousin, and that first cousin then described that essentially he had sued the journalists for misidentifying him in the wedding photo. That first cousin then got upset because the Elysee Palace kind of played him into suing her for defamation, pretending they were going to join the suit, but then also Brigitte Macron refused to simply say, bring that picture back up, yeah, that's me in the wedding photo. She refused to do this and just kind of backed out. And so he wasn't happy with this. He was not happy. He felt used by the Elysee Palace. He opened up to a journalist and tells us some really strange things about his for defamation, pretending they were going to join the suit, but then also Brigitte Macron refused to simply say, bring that picture back up, yeah, that's me in the wedding photo. She refused to do this and just kind of backed out. And so he wasn't happy with this. He was not happy. He felt used by the Elysee Palace. He opened up to a journalist and tells us some really strange things about his cousin's burial, about his cousin's funeral, about his cousin's cremation. Mainly, the strangest thing being that the Elysee Palace was involved, okay? They wanted to see to it that this funeral was executed like a thief in the night. They did not want the public to learn about this, and they saw it over the finish line, and yet despite this, Brigitte Macron did not attend the funeral of her alleged ex-husband of 32 years, the alleged father of her children. We want to make sure he's buried, okay? But we are not going to show up. Neither me or the president are going to show up. And then Tiffon is going to just make up a massive mistake in Paris Match and say, I buried my father on December 24th. And then we learn, no, he was actually cremated on December 28th, and it was a year prior, and this is the photo you use because everything was destroyed. Okay, that's crazy. So yes, remember that we learned that information not from a conspiracy theorist. We learned this from the cousin, John Louis Ozier, the cousin of Andre. Okay, wow. The one who successfully sued Natasha Ray for defamation because she wrongly assumed that it was him. Okay, what we do know,
and he didn't want no parts of that.
This
he
man,
didn't want no parts.
Again, his obituary photo, because no other photos of him exist. From the wedding photo to this, his whole life has been in.
Wait a minute. Yeah, what the frackernackle? What in the frackernackle is this? This is the daddy that took on the daughter and had. Is this the killer dad? That his wife allowed him to take on their daughter and all he had to do was pay her? Is this... Oh, Lord. This is some crazy old voodoo hoodoo shit.
Destroyed. What we can tell you is that he did, in fact, exist. They lied. The cousin, John Louis Ozier, the cousin of Andre, okay? The one who successfully sued Natasha Ray for defamation
this is the
because
cousin.
She wrongly assumed that it was him, okay? What we do know, and we confirmed last episode, is that this man...
Are they already... She has
no other photos of him exist.
Over the weekend.
From the wedding photo to this,
they put a hit on her.
Has been destroyed. What we can tell you is that he did, in fact, exist. They lied about where he worked, what bank he worked at. Again, tons of little lies to send people down rabbit holes so they can make a mistake. But what we can't tell you is what exactly happened to him. We cannot ascertain what happened to him based on the testimony of his first cousin.
Yeah, that's why I was saying that I think President Barack Obama...
His partner the woman who was at his funeral, who claimed that she found tickets to Africa in his pocket, that he had emptied all of his bank accounts. And if you potentially, or you could say, and or if you believe the journalist from Paris Match, who then wrote that Andre actually spent the last days of his life in a psychiatric ward being guarded by none other than Alexander Benalla. Now, we got to talk about this guy, okay? Because he's important. He's very important because he's come up actually a couple of times, but we should dig into deep of why that particular allegation matters. Because it's interesting that despite the fact that they love to sue people, they never went after that journalist who claimed that Alexander Benalla, the former deputy chief of staff to Emmanuel Macron, was guarding, for whatever reason, guarding a psychiatric ward door of Andre. So we know for a fact that Élysée Palace was involved, at the very least, in his funeral, and this journalist puts that, so I think we should explore that. So we should talk about Alexander Benalla, because that is not a subtle mention from a journalist, okay? We had first mentioned Alexander Benalla in the introductory episode when we told you about sort of this, I don't know how to describe it, like a syndicate almost of pedophiles. That's these accidental pedophiles that Emmanuel Macron keeps landing himself around, okay? We mentioned Olivier Duhamel. That was the man who was accused by his stepdaughter of having molested her twin brother when he was 13 or 14 years old. She wrote this in a book.
He can't get pregnant.
By the way, because
who his mama is, he can't get pregnant.
Brought to justice, but he admitted that it was true, that he did, in fact, sexually abuse his teenage son. Well, one of the things that he helped, because he was so close, very least in his funeral, and this journalist puts that, so I think we should explore that. So we should talk about Alexander Benalla, because that is not a subtle mention from a journalist, okay? We had first mentioned Alexander Benalla in the introductory episode when we told you about sort of this, I don't know how to describe it, like a syndicate almost of pedophiles. That's these accidental pedophiles that Emmanuel Macron keeps landing himself around, okay? We mentioned Olivier Duhamel. That was the man who was accused by his stepdaughter of having molested her twin brother when he was 13 or 14 years old. She wrote this in a book. And by the way, because the statute of limitations had passed, he was never brought to justice, but he admitted that it was true, that he did, in fact, sexually abuse his teenage son. Well, one of the things that he helped, because he was so close to Emmanuel Macron with, he helped him when he landed himself in hot water over what has come to be known in France as the Benalla affair, meaning Alexander Benalla, the deputy chief of staff, okay? And now, for whatever reason, like I said, we have no idea why this journalist mentioned, but said Alexander Benalla was guarding the psychiatric ward. So I'm going to show you Alexander Benalla again so that you can get him into your mind, despite being extremely young. I want to be clear. He is today only 33 years old.
Wow.
He's got quite a remarkable professional resume, okay? When Emmanuel Macron was running for president, Alexander Benalla was just 25 years old, and he served the candidate as his security officer. He was the head of his security, okay? Once Emmanuel Macron got elected, he then made Alexander Benalla his deputy chief of staff, okay? Huge position. Could you imagine 25 years old and you're like going into the White House, the Élysée Palace? It was then later discovered that these two had an incredibly close relationship, so close that Emmanuel took him on a ski trip with him and his family. Not as the security, as you're a part of the family on a ski trip. And even closer than that, Emmanuel Macron allowed Alexander Benalla, this 25, 26-year-old kid, essentially, to move into the National Palace of the French Republic, okay? He was living at the Palace of the Alma. That is shocking. He had residency here, okay? So what's going on here? Just imagine you're 26, you're living in a palace, and I don't know, I'm thinking he must have provided some incredible security to the president. He must have done the president some solids, okay? When you dig into his past, you learn that back when Benalla was 23 years old, he had been accused and then subsequently acquitted of violence against a woman, okay? Insofar that she said that she was rendered incapacitated to work. But as I said, he was acquitted, and then he became the head of Emmanuel Macron's security team. Then, when Emmanuel Macron was president, a massive scandal broke, which came to be known, obviously, as the Benalla affair in 2018, when his deputy chief of staff was actually caught on camera, dressed as a police officer, beating protesters in the street of Paris. I'm not kidding, okay? Le Monde, I told you that's like the French New York Times, broke the story. They had footage of him. It was undoubtedly Benalla impersonating a police officer and beating a young protester in the streets. And then a second video emerged, which was published onto Twitter, which showed Benalla grabbing a female protester by the neck and dragging her away. Actually, I'm going to ask my producer, Skylar, were we able to pull that footage? Okay, great. Let's actually show you some of that footage. This is just to make you guys understand this. What you are looking at is a chief of staff of a president beating up a protester who's going to come on in there in police uniform. That's him. Look at this. Just totally normal chief of staff stuff, right? That's what everybody's chief of staff is doing all around the world. It would later be discovered that as people began investigating the story more and more, that 3 police officers provided him with more surveillance footage. Alexander Benalla, they were giving him surveillance footage that had not yet been made available to the public, essentially allowing for him to prepare his defense, which signals to us that, okay, they've got ties with the police officers. Clearly, otherwise he wouldn't have been given the uniform to wear as he pretended to be a police officer that day. Now, President Macron at the time of this attack was in Australia. He seemed incredibly reluctant to let go of his deputy chief or to speak about the matter in any capacity publicly, essentially, which is why I guess he called up his dual friend. What should I do? What do you mean, what should you do? Your chief of staff was just caught beating protesters in the street. Why aren't you just more shocked at that? What do you mean, what do you do? And it seems that Emmanuel Macron might have been so concerned about this that he tried to help Alexander out. Now, why am I making that assumption? Again, this is an assumption, not a fact. But what is a fact is that Alexander Benalla, when he was being interviewed about the scandal, none other than Mimi Marchand was in the room to assist him, speaking to the press. Mimi Marchand, yes, the Pope, the celebrity popess of the press, who could get anything in the press, anything taken out of the press, woman that could get the press to cover up pedophilia charges for her friends, okay? Eventually, as the scandal completely engulfed the Élysée Palace, they did in fact have to move to dismiss Benalla. On paper, at least. I want to be clear. On paper, he was released, because then another scandal emerged. It would later be discovered that a few months later, they realized that they did not actually remove his diplomatic passports. And despite being seemingly fired, several months later, he used those diplomatic passports to travel to meet with African leaders, including the president of Chad, a guy named Idris Deby. Now, for people that are watching this from Africa, you're looking at this guy going, didn't he die a few years later in kind of one of those stereotypical Western scenarios where suddenly a group of rebels rises up? Give me like a Muammar Gaddafi type situation, and the rebels are just so unhappy and they kill the president. Yeah, that's what happened to that guy in Chad. Yeah. So, but I'm sure it was totally organic and people were really unhappy in the streets and like the West had nothing to do with it. Nonetheless, Alexander Benalla was meeting with this guy on diplomatic passports after he had been fired. So it was the second part of the scandal. It then emerged that while he was working for Macron, Alexander Benalla, this 26-year-old palace-living king, had actually contracted financial ties with 2 Russian oligarchs who were said to be members of the Russian mafia. Oopsies, again, I guess everyone around me is accused of being either a criminal, a pedophile, so what? For Macron, Alexander Benalla, this 26-year-old palace-living king, had actually contracted financial ties with 2 Russian oligarchs who were said to be members of the Russian mafia. Oopsies. Again, I guess everyone around me is accused of being either a criminal, a pedophile. So what? I'm sure Emmanuel Macron is always just so innocent in this. Brigitte, it just keeps happening to them. They're trying to work with good people, guys. They're really trying to surround themselves with good people. I swear, it's everyone around them. It's just not them. I think that we should actually take a look here at this extraordinary syndicate that is emerging around them, because we've covered a lot of these people. So Michelle Marchand, obviously the popess up there on the left, right of the French media. We know she's been involved in dirt. She's been kicked out, forgery, extortion, you name it. She's been accused of it. A woman that we understand had the capacity, the only person that people had to go through to get photos of the First Lady's past. She owns Best Image, okay? And you're telling me this is the only person that can produce images from Brigitte Macron's past before she became a professor.
He looked like the man used to be on Law and Order.
Seems a little suspect. Then below her, we have Bernard Arnault, richest man in the world because he controls LVMH. We mentioned his son-in-law, Xavier Niel, who was the in-between, the go-between between Mimi Marchand and the first couple. But I want you to also know that LVMH owns Paris Match. Okay, so that's where she's putting all of these doctored, airbrushed images, I would say airbrushed images of Brigitte, so that everyone thinks she's like young and looking and irresistibly hot. She's working on that. Then we'll jump up to the right corner there. We mentioned Nicolas Ghesquière. This is the person that's dressing the First Lady, also under the LVMH empire, the one who is just putting transgendered people everywhere he can. Honestly, you should just Google Nicolas Ghesquière in your spare time, because we didn't even scratch the surface in terms of how dedicated he is to the trans cause and bringing all these trans models and putting them on the runway and trying to trans everything. But I'm sure Brigitte Macron is exactly who he says he is. And just, I don't know, just wants to dress Brigitte Macron for whatever reason. It is what it is. Then, of course, as we mentioned, Emmanuel Macron's mother, Françoise Nogue, who we know is concerning her work to trying to get individuals who suffer from identity issues new identities. And doing this, by the way, this is legal. This is legal now, okay? And then we have there on the bottom, who we just discussed, was Alexandra Vanala. So just piece all that together, okay? With forgery, extortion, and most importantly, with access to a woman who can facilitate the changing of identities, it is not enough for any person investigating this case to ask questions like, is this Brigitte Trogneau in the wedding photo?
No.
You will notice we didn't ask that question when my legal...
No. No. She's not that tall. First of all, and that's not that nose. Second of all, no. That ain't the head. That ain't none of that. No. Y'all think that's the same? This right here is the female. It's a no for me.
Team got involved. We didn't say, is this Brigitte Trogneau in the wedding photo? We had to instead ask something more specific. Is this the current First Lady of France, Brigitte Macron, pictured here in this wedding photo? Okay? And that's when the couple gets real quiet. They don't want to answer those questions. Do you guys get what I'm getting at here? Okay? Because we can confirm that that is in... Want to answer those questions. Do you guys get what got involved? We didn't say, is this Brigitte Trogneau in the wedding photo? We had to instead ask something more specific. Is this the current First Lady of France, Brigitte Macron, pictured here in this wedding photo? Okay? And that's when the couple gets real quiet. They don't want to answer those questions. Do you guys get what I'm getting at here? Okay? Because we can confirm that that is indeed a photo of a woman named Brigitte Trogneau in that wedding photo. Where that Brigitte is, we cannot confirm because the First Lady refuses to answer. She has a mother-in-law who helps transgendered people get new identities. So you have to essentially understand that you can just take somebody's name. You can become somebody else at a moment's notice now legally when you become transgendered, okay? This brings us to Jean-Michel Trogneau. Okay, we
nasty.
Him.
Yeah, it
this
sure
is.
is.
Trogneau's
This
brother.
is why she
Today
has
is his birthday. Happy birthday,
that's the
Jean-Michel
little
Trogneau.
boy.
It's really important
That's the
that we
one
learn
that
about
can't-
him, a guy who was
can't
so
walk.
close to his sister,
And
two
heels.
different people. His sister, Brigitte Trogneau, that she made him the best man at her wedding. But sister, Brigitte Trogneau, that she made him the... This brings us to Jean-Michel Trogneau. Okay, we obviously have to discuss him. This is Brigitte Trogneau's brother. Today is his birth.
Yeah, no, that's him. That's the nose. And that's the look cut and or the whatever that is. Yeah, that the wig is not covering sometimes. No, that's him. Look at the ears on that little boy. Oh my. Put some earrings on or something. Where's my cursor?
Happy birthday, Jean-Michel Trogneau. It's really important that we learn about him, a guy who was so close to his sister, two different people, his sister, Brigitte Trogneau, that she made him the best man at her wedding. But then he just was completely missing from mention when the First Lady Brigitte Macron came into power. Seemed to be purposeful to allow this person to fall through the cracks, despite all of the stuff being written about her family and where she came from. There was no mention of Jean-Michel Trogneau. That was the dog that was not barking. We're going to talk about him. We're going to allow that dog to bark. But first, I'm going to take a quick break here to remind you about some of our amazing sponsors.
Y'all want me to keep going, or you want me to come back tomorrow? Y'all want me to keep going? It's deep. These are the people who has put a hit on Candace Owens, because these people are tied to BB, Andrew Windsor, Trump. They're all connected. This is crazy. It's all full circle, baby. I got about 15, 20 more minutes in me.
Visit 7weekscoffee.com and use code Candace at checkout today. All right, let's speak about Jean-Michel Trogneau. This has been trending in France.
Let's go and get this out the way.
Explosive. Everybody knows something's going on here, but the English-speaking world did not understand what was happening. And there are a lot of questions even in the French-speaking world. They don't understand why it is that Xavier Poussard has not been sued for defamation, but Natasha Ray has. What is the difference? Xavier Poussard was always very clear with me that his major breakthrough came thanks to the work of Natasha Ray. She came to him and first said, like, this is Jean-Michel Trogneau. I've been working on this. So where did she fumble the ball and where did he not fumble the ball? And this is where it gets really interesting, and it was why it was so important for me to slow that down for you, that we are talking about two different individuals, Jean-Michel Trogneau and his sister Brigitte Trogneau. What you should know about Jean-Michel Trogneau was that he was born on February 11th, 1945. And regarding his existence, there can be no question. In fact, it is a stark contrast to trying to look into Brigitte Trogneau. Unlike his sister, Brigitte Trogneau, who, like her husband, appears to have nearly every trace of her existence magically wiped, destroyed. You cannot get your hands on documents. In fact, Brigitte Trogneau, person who's claiming to be in the Élysée Palace as Brigitte Macron, you'd think it'd be very easy to get school pictures of her. You can't get them. Xavier Poussard has gone through court processes in order to get his hands on a yearbook that should be supplied by law, okay? She went to Sacred Heart, Sacre Croix. I hope I'm saying that okay in French. Sacre Croix. and they're supposed to give you the yearbook so you can look at a picture. Despite this, the school is refusing to do that. Now, why would a school refuse to give you a photo of the First Lady, growing up? Why can't we see pictures of the First Lady in yearbooks that are in existence? Why can't we see her in elementary school, in middle school, in high school? Why is it that every trace of Brigitte Trogneu's existence is impossible to garner? And it was also difficult, but not impossible to garner, stuff about Jean-Michel Trogneux, and we were able to piece together a very clear timeline of his existence until he kind of magically falls off of a cliff. So we will walk you through this timeline, okay? Jean-Michel, as I told you, born in 1945. We then know that he begins attending a Jesuit academy. We have multiple photos of him.
I used to live by a Jesuit.
And I'm going to show you one of them, I believe, that we have here. Yep, so if you look there on the far right bottom, you will see that is Jean-Michel Trogneux. Okay, and like I said, I'm going to save some of the photos that we have because Xavier Poussard is going to be our next episode of that interview, and what he worked to get his hands on is explosive, and I do not want... We have multiple photos of him at a Jesuit academy, and I'm going to show you one of them, I believe, that we have here. Yep, so if you look there on the far right bottom, you will see that is Jean-Michel Trogneux.
Oh, yeah, okay. Right here.
And like I said, I'm going to save some of the photos that we have because Xavier Poussard is going to be our next episode, that interview, and what he worked to get his hands on is explosive, and I do not want to ruin that for him. Jumping back into our timeline, in 1953, his little sister, Brigitte Trogneux, was born. Then we know, like I said, he continued to attend that Jesuit academy. Then we have that famous 1944 family picture, which Best Image released to the documentary maker, who felt like she was, for whatever reason, being questioned by the Élysée Palace, that were treating her like she was under interrogation. She was able to get her hands on that family picture. Face, though. 1955 to 1956, he's back at school. Again, we will have those class photos available for you in Xavier's interview in our sit down, which will be releasing
that
next.
Week, though.
In 1960, Brigitte and Jean-Michel Trogneux's sister, Mary Von Trogneux, dies in a car accident with her husband, Paul Farcy, on February 24th. Their daughter, Natalie, 5 months old at the time, survives and goes on to marry a guy named Richard, and they have 2 daughters. In 1963, the public is then given a photo of what we are told is the real Brigitte Trogneux at communion. We note that this does not look like the current First Lady, and the current First Lady has thus far, to this day, declined to answer my question about whether or not if it's Brigitte Trogneux in the photo, but whether or not it's her in the photo. Important differentiation. In 1963, Jean-Michel Trogneux lived in Algiers, in February. So he was 18 years old. This is a highly unusual thing, as Xavier told me, because this was just after the bloody War of Independence, Algeria getting their independence from France. And he says at this time, no Frenchmen went to Algeria unless they were communists. But we know that he was there because there was a census available. And we are keen suddenly to get a photo of him around this time because, well, now we're not talking about kid photos, which seems to be the only thing Brigitte Macron wants to release. A very small amount, a total of 3 photos that were released. Doesn't want to release any older photos until suddenly Brigitte Macron is a professor, right? Brigitte Ozier says, I'm a professor. We're just kind of missing these important years of her life, which would allow us to see the face sort of mutate over time, right? This next photo, which I'm not going to show you because it is explosive and it took Xavier Poussard years to get. He gets his hands on a photo of Jean-Michel Trogneux, who is enrolled in the ESTP school, which is a French engineering school. That becomes the last verified photo that we have on record. But I want you to note he is 18 at this time. You take any person, you take a photo of them when they're 18, and it is very hard to say that you were expecting this person to look majorly different, right? Decades on from that, because you are a young adult, right?
Just because it's wet outside, you don't need to wear boots. Presenting Skechers waterproof sneakers. With
please hit the like button for me. I would greatly appreciate it.
Lightweight, easy to wear sneaker.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Join the
Jumping
membership.
back into this timeline, we then know that the real Brigitte Trogneau marries Andre Louis Ozier, becoming Brigitte Ozier. We have a wedding announcement. We have a wedding photo. It actually happened, and that is the photo which Natasha Ray made an unfortunate and totally understandable mistake regarding. And then, like I told you, for whatever reason, Jean Michel photographically disappears. He disappears. And then this amazing thing happens. In 1977, when people started recognizing that their first lady, something about this story didn't make sense. When people began first speaking about their suspicions that they were looking at a transitioned man for many reasons, they were able to dig up an interview, okay, from 1977. And it's a man who